Welcome back to Inside Stories Podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Nora.
Here, we explore power, money, and the minds behind the world's biggest stories.
This is not motivation. This is not gossip.
This is Inside Stories Podcast.
Fire hose of information you send us, all the articles, the research, your notes, and we distill it down to the pure, concentrated knowledge you actually need.
And today, we're looking at a number that's almost, well, it's hard to even wrap your head around it.
$619 billion. It's a number so big it just becomes abstract.
It does. But as you pointed out in the source material, we're not here today to just, marvel at Elon Musk's net worth.
No.
Our mission is to really reverse engineer the blueprint. How did this happen? We have to get past that easy, lazy narrative of, oh, he just got lucky.
Exactly. Because the background you provided, it paints this picture of, well, not privilege, but of just relentless struggle.
A normal family in South Africa, right. He was intensely bullied as a kid. He went through major failures, near bankruptcies.
It was not a straight line to the top. So if it wasn't inherited wealth, and if it wasn't just luck, what was the differentiator? What were the actual strategies that set him apart?
And that's the real question for you, the learner. Is this kind of success built on things you can actually replicate? And the sources say, yes, it is. So today we're going to unpack the architecture of what's described as relentless success.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this blueprint. And I think we have to start where every big idea starts.
Yes.
The foundational mindset.
The first and maybe the most important strategy the sources point to is the primary driver, having a vision beyond money.
Right. For most people getting into business, the main goal, the metric, is profit.
Of course. But for Musk, that just wasn't the case. His initial vision was almost existential. It was about securing or saving humanity.
And that just changes the entire conversation, doesn't it? When he starts a company, the question isn't how much money will this make next quarter?
Is this necessary for the long-term survival of civilization?
So Tesla isn't really a car company. It's a vehicle, no pun intended, for sustainable energy. And SpaceX isn't just a launch company.
It's about making humanity multiplanetary. It's an insurance policy against existential risk.
And the money. Well, the money just becomes a side effect.
Exactly. It's the fuel you need to achieve these massive goals, but it's not the goal itself. And that shift in motivation is probably the single biggest differentiator in this entire blueprint.
To have a vision that big, you need an equally big amount of conviction. Because if you're aiming for Mars, you're going to have to take some risks that look, well, completely crazy to everyone else.
Which brings us right to the next point, taking insane risks. And we're not talking about just, calculated business risks.
No, this is an all-in bet the farm kind of commitment.
Think about it. After he sold PayPal, he had $180 million. That's set for life money for generations.
But the sources confirm he took all of it, every single penny, and put it straight into Tesla and SpaceX.
When you imagine those conversations, he's pouring his entire fortune into two companies that were, at the time, just burning cash and facing almost certain failure.
People absolutely called him crazy.
Oh, for sure. He was starting an electric car company when that whole sector was basically dead. He's building rockets in an industry run by, governments and defense giants.
But his philosophy, and this is something we really have to absorb, is that nothing truly extraordinary ever happens without taking that kind of extreme risk. If you stay safe,
you guarantee mediocrity.
But taking an insane risk like that, it only works if you have the perspective to see it through.
Which brings us to the next point. You have to have a long-term vision.
Precisely. If you were just focused on quarterly earnings, both of those companies would have collapsed years and years ago. He was looking 10, 20, even 30 years down the road.
Let's use Tesla as the example again.
Right.
When he started, the market for a high-end electric car basically didn't exist.
Right. And they had years of just massive losses. Production hell, they were near bankrupt in 2008.
If you don't have that decades-long vision, you pull the plug. You give up when the press is writing your company's obituary. But because his vision was so far out, this future of a sustainable energy economy, he could handle that short-term pain and the reward for that patience.
Today, Tesla is the most valuable car company in the world.
It's proof that patience isn't just waiting around, it's a strategic weapon.
Okay, so that's the mindset. But the jump from having the vision to the day-to-day execution, that's brutal. Ideas are cheap, right?
Execution is everything. And the first lesson in execution is maybe the toughest one to swallow. Failing forward.
You really can't talk about his success without talking about the failures. especially at SpaceX.
Oh, the devastation of those early failures.
I remember reading this in the source material. The first 3 SpaceX rockets, they failed.
Not just failed, they were catastrophic failures. Blew up.
Millions and millions of dollars just gone. And the entire aerospace industry, the media, they were literally laughing at him.
And that's a moment when almost any other leader would have just folded the company. I mean, he was spending his own fortune on this.
But instead of quitting, they just kept learning from it. They treated every failure not as an endpoint, but as really expensive data.
And that turning point. The 4th rocket finally worked. It succeeded. That secured the first big contracts.
The key takeaway there is so powerful. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's just a necessary, ongoing part of the process.
And that ability to learn so fast from failure leads us right into the next strategy, an obsession with learning.
This part is fascinating to me because he didn't have a formal education in rocket science. He wasn't some PhD in aerospace engineering.
Yeah, no. He didn't wait for an expert to come and solve his problems for him. He just taught himself.
He mastered rocketry by, reading textbooks? Calling up the best engineers and just picking their brains?
Yes, and by always going back to the core principles of whatever discipline he was trying to master. He has this famous belief that he can understand anything if he reads its fundamentals.
That obsession, that self-education, is what makes him so independent. He doesn't wait for an expert. He becomes enough of an expert himself to challenge the old assumptions.
And challenging those assumptions is what lets him use maybe the most powerful tool in the whole blueprint, thinking in first principles.
Okay, this is a phrase that can sound a little like, corporate jargon. So we need to break this down simply for you.
Right. So conventional thinking starts with what already exists. You take the current product, the current price, and you try to make it, say, 5 or 10% better.
First principles thinking means you throw all of that away. You discard all the assumptions, and you break a problem down to its absolute root cause, to the fundamental, undeniable truths.
Let's use that classic example from the source material, the cost of a rocket.
Right. So when people told him rockets were just ridiculously expensive, he didn't try to negotiate the price down. He asked a different question.
A much better question. He asked, what is the actual cost of the raw materials needed to build a rocket? If we just bought them on the open market.
And that was the big aha moment, the realization.
The raw materials, the aluminum, the carbon fiber, the oxygen, that was only about 2% of the rocket's final price tag.
98%. Just think about that. 98% of the cost was just historical markups, inefficient manufacturing, bloated old processes.
It's the definition of waste. And knowing that wasn't enough, he had to execute on it. He moved toward what they call extreme vertical integration.
They didn't just buy parts, they started designing the machines that build the parts. They reinvented the whole process.
And that is what allowed SpaceX to cut costs by a factor of 10. That is the power of just stripping away assumptions and solving the real root problem.
It's incredible. But you can have the vision, the learning, the first principles. None of it matters without the human engine behind it. Which brings us to work ethic, like a machine.
This one is the absolute counter-argument to the idea of luck. This is just pure, sustained grind over decades.
The sources talk about him working 80 to 100 hours a week, famously literally sleeping on the factory floor.
Yes, when those critical production deadlines for the Model 3 were at risk, he was right there.
That highlights a level of intensity that's, it's frankly overwhelming for most people to even think about. It's not a shortcut, it's just sheer brutal effort.
And a lot of people might ask, is that sustainable? And the sources do touch on the cost, the personal stress, the demands on the team.
Of course.
But if we reframe it not as a lifestyle, but as commensurate effort, the perspective shifts. If your mission is to change the world, like getting humans to orbit, your effort has to match the scale of that problem.
And that kind of intensity means you can't do it all yourself. You have to delegate.
Which leads directly to the next point, hiring smarter people. He knows that even with his obsession for learning, he can't be the smartest person in every single room.
So he hires the best of the best, the top engineers, the most brilliant designers, people who are smarter than him in their specific fields.
And then, and this is key, he gives them the freedom to actually innovate, to do their work.
It's a huge sign of real leadership, isn't it? To set your ego aside like that. A leader who always has to be the smartest person in the room, they just limit the potential of the whole team.
Exactly. He empowers them by trusting their expertise.
Okay, let's look at the bigger picture. how he manages risk across all of his ventures. Because if you're making these huge bets, you need some kind of structural protection.
That's where creating multiple revenue streams comes in. It's a massive risk management tool. He never bet everything on just one business.
You've got Tesla in energy and automotive, SpaceX in aerospace and telecom, Neuralink in medical tech, the Boring Company in infrastructure.
And X in social media.
Right. It's diversification, but it's across completely separate industries.
And that's the crucial part. If the car market crashes, SpaceX is still launching satellites. If one company hits a regulatory wall, the others can keep the whole ecosystem stable and funded.
And finally, operating at this scale, you have to address the noise, the constant criticism.
Ignoring the noise. When you're this public and your goals are this big, the criticism is nonstop. Trolling, media critiques, financial attacks.
If you're trying to put a base on Mars, you're basically asking for controversy and doubt.
But the key distinction the sources make is learning to filter that noise. It's easy to say ignore it, but some of it is valid.
Sure, if it's about production failures or a launch license, that's not just trolling, that's real data.
Exactly. And the source material suggests he mastered distinguishing between valid data, even when it's painful, and just opinion. Opinion that's designed to derail the mission.
So you have to tune out the doubt and only listen for the actionable information.
If you're doing something revolutionary, the crowd is always going to doubt you at first. You just have to.
So that's the full blueprint. A mindset of huge vision and insane risk, an execution strategy built on learning and work ethic, and it's all protected by diversification and focus.
So what does all this actually mean for you? You might not be launching a rocket next week.
Probably not.
But these strategies are absolutely applicable to any career, any ambition you have. So let's just simplify the takeaways.
Okay. First, move beyond just generic risk-taking. Think in terms of calculated asymmetric bets.
Don't just risk things blindly. Put your time and energy into ideas where the potential upside is just massive, world-changing, and the downside, the loss, is something you can manage.
And stay away from those safe ventures that just give you mediocre results.
Second, embrace obsessive learning as independence. Continuously learn to the point where you don't need to rely on external experts for everything. That knowledge is real power.
Third, adopt commensurate effort. Just reject this idea of easy success. If you want ordinary results, ordinary effort is fine.
But if you want extraordinary results, your effort has to match the scale of that ambition. And yeah, that might mean some 100-hour weeks.
Fourth, master first principles strategy. Don't just try to make small improvements. When you face a big challenge, throw out the assumptions. Break the problem down to its fundamental truths.
Find that 98% of waste that's hiding in your own processes.
And fifth, and this is a big one, embrace patience as a strategic asset. Reject that instant gratification cycle that's everywhere in our culture.
World-changing goals take decades, not months. The compound growth of your work, your learning, it only pays off if you can maintain that long-term focus.
When you put it all together, the synthesis from these sources brings us right back to that core message. Wealth isn't about luck.
It's about vision, obsession, and just relentless execution.
He didn't end up with $619 billion because he got fortunate. He got there because he chose a mission that could alter the world and then dedicated his entire life, his money, his schedule, his mind to that one pursuit.
So if achieving that kind of success meant stripping away 98% of the conventional thinking about how to build a rocket or run a business, then we have to ask ourselves, what fundamental assumptions are you still holding on to about your own career or your life that are costing you 98% of your potential?
Reflect on that mission, whatever your scale, and start the work of stripping away those assumptions today.
If you enjoy real stories about power, money, and mindset, hit subscribe and stay with Inside Stories Podcast. New episodes every week.